There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey when the world grows silent, when every door seems to close, and every ounce of strength feels drained. You look around and realize that no one truly sees the battle you're fighting. The nights are heavy, the mornings colder, and a quiet voice whispers, "Maybe this is the end." But it isn't. This is your final test, your last battle before the breakthrough. The pain that surrounds you is not a signal to quit. It is the sign that transformation is near. You are being stripped of everything false so that what is real can finally emerge. The universe has not abandoned you. It is refining you. Every chosen one must walk through this fire not to be destroyed, but to remember who they truly are. The shadows you face now are the guardians of your light, and they will not move until you realize the power that has been within you all along. So don't give up now. You are not falling apart. You are being reborn. This is the moment where destiny tests your faith, and where your soul begins to rise. The collapse of the old self is not a tragedy but an initiation. It is the beginning of an inner earthquake that shakes the foundations of everything you once believed to be stable. The identity you have carefully constructed, your roles, your achievements, your definitions of success, begins to crumble under the weight of time and experience. What once seemed certain now dissolves into confusion, and the very ground of your being feels uncertain. Many mistake this collapse for failure, for loss, for the end of who they are. But in truth, it is the beginning of the most sacred process of renewal. The old self must fall apart for the real self to emerge. Like a snake shedding its skin, you cannot grow without leaving something behind. In this collapse, you face the fragments of your own story. You begin to see how much of your identity was borrowed. Expectations from parents, approval from society, masks crafted to fit in and be accepted. You see how you have lived to meet standards that were never yours, carrying dreams that belonged to others. The self you thought was authentic reveals itself as a collection of images shaped by fear, conformity, and survival. And when this realization dawns, something deep inside you trembles. It feels as if you are dying, but it is only the illusion dying. What is truly you cannot be destroyed. It is simply being uncovered. The collapse does not come gently. It rarely arrives when you are ready. It enters through heartbreak, disappointment, failure, or loss. It breaks through the routines of comfort and forces you to confront the questions you have long avoided. Who am I when I am no longer defined by what I do, what I own, or how others see me? What remains when every external anchor is removed? These are not intellectual questions. They are lived experiences felt in the emptiness of the soul. You begin to realize that rebuilding is not about fixing what is broken, but about awakening to what has always been hidden beneath the surface. During this stage, resistance is natural. The mind clings to what is familiar, even if it is painful. You may try to rebuild the old walls, to restore what has fallen, to pretend that nothing has changed. But the deeper truth insists on being seen. The more you resist the collapse, the greater the inner tension grows. The self that is ready to be born cannot exist within the ruins of the old. It needs space, silence, and surrender. To rebuild yourself, you must first let yourself fall apart completely, without judgment. You must let go of the illusion of control and allow life to dismantle the structures that no longer serve your growth. This is the moment when humility enters. The ego, once proud of its achievements and identities, must now bow before something larger and mysterious. You start to sense that there is an intelligence guiding this disintegration, a deeper order behind the chaos. You begin to understand that your suffering is not meaningless but purposeful. It is a sacred dismantling, a way for the soul to reclaim its truth from the debris of falsehood. The old self was never meant to last forever. It was a necessary form for a certain stage of your life, but it has completed its purpose. Now, the call is to evolve, to move beyond it. Amid the collapse, fear often takes the shape of emptiness. You may feel disconnected, numb, or uncertain. The future becomes a fog, the past a fading echo. Yet this emptiness is not a void to be feared. It is the space in which new life begins. The silence that follows destruction is not the silence of death but of gestation. Something unseen is forming within you. The soul, no longer confined by rigid definitions, starts to breathe again. You might not see the new self yet, but its heartbeat can be felt in the quiet moments of surrender. To rebuild yourself, you must learn to honor this collapse as a divine necessity. Every great transformation requires a breaking point. Just as the seed must split before it can sprout, the old identity must fracture for the deeper essence to emerge. You are being stripped not to be left bare, but to be revealed. The collapse shows you what cannot be taken away: your consciousness, your presence, your ability to witness and endure. These are the materials from which the new self will be formed. The process is not linear, nor is it comfortable. It moves in waves of clarity and confusion, despair and hope. But slowly, as you stop clinging to the old, a quiet strength begins to rise from within. You discover that the collapse was not your enemy. It was your teacher. It dismantled the false so that the true could appear. And though the old self may never return, something far more authentic begins to take shape, born from the ashes of surrender and the wisdom of experience. To rebuild yourself, you must descend into the shadow, the unseen and often unwanted part of your being that you have denied, suppressed, or ignored. This descent is not a choice made from comfort. It is a call from the depths of your soul, urging you to face what has been buried beneath the surface of your personality. Every human being carries within them a dual nature, both light and darkness, both love and fear, both compassion and rage. The shadow is not evil, it is simply the part of you that has remained unconscious. To deny it is to live only half a life. To confront it is to begin the process of becoming whole. The journey into the shadow begins the moment you stop blaming the world for your suffering and turn inward to meet your own truth. At first, this meeting is painful. You begin to see how your fears shape your choices, how your jealousy poisons your peace, how your pride hides your wounds. The image you once built of yourself as good, strong, or innocent starts to fracture. You realize that you are not purely one thing or another, you are a mixture of contradictions. You carry kindness and cruelty, courage and cowardice, wisdom and ignorance within the same heart. This realization humbles you. It forces you to confront the reality that the darkness you see in others is a reflection of something that also exists in you. As you step deeper into this inner underworld, resistance arises. The ego does not want to see its flaws, its insecurities, its hypocrisy. It prefers to project the unwanted parts outward, to condemn others for what it secretly fears within itself. But projection is only a way to postpone awakening. The shadow grows stronger the longer it is ignored. The more you deny your anger, the more it controls you. The more you suppress your fear, the more it shapes your destiny from the shadows. To rebuild yourself, you must bring light to these hidden regions, not through judgment but through awareness. Awareness is the lantern that illuminates the cave of the unconscious. When you observe your darkness without fleeing from it, something extraordinary happens. You begin to integrate it. The emotions that once ruled you start to lose their power. Anger becomes assertiveness. Envy transforms into inspiration. Fear turns into intuition. The very forces that once seemed destructive reveal their hidden wisdom. The shadow, when faced with honesty and courage, becomes an ally rather than an enemy. It is the raw material of transformation, the unrefined gold that the soul must learn to shape into understanding. This descent is often lonely. The world encourages you to be positive, to smile, to stay busy, to keep the darkness out of sight. But no true rebuilding can occur without honesty. The deeper you go into yourself, the less you can hide behind illusions. You begin to see how much of your life has been governed by avoidance, how you sought distractions, relationships, or success to escape the silence that mirrors your inner truth. In that silence, the shadow whispers the parts of your story you refuse to hear. It shows you the pain of your childhood, the disappointments you never grieved, the resentment that hardened into cynicism. Facing these truths is not weakness, it is the highest form of courage. The descent is not just psychological, it is spiritual. It strips away false layers of identity and reveals the vast mystery of the self. When you stop running from your pain, you realize that your pain has been running after you only to be acknowledged. The emotions that once terrified you begin to open like locked doors. Behind your rage lies your wounded heart. Behind your shame lies your innocence. Behind your fear lies your longing to live freely. Every shadow conceals a hidden light, but that light cannot be accessed until you are willing to enter the darkness without judgment. Through this journey, you begin to understand that the shadow is not a curse. It is a mirror. It reflects the parts of you that are waiting to be reclaimed. Each time you embrace a rejected aspect of yourself, you become more whole, more grounded, more authentic. You no longer depend on perfection to feel worthy. You accept your humanity in its fullness. This acceptance is not resignation but liberation. It allows you to act from consciousness rather than compulsion, to love without projection, to speak truth without fear. The descent into the shadow transforms your relationship with others as well. You stop seeing enemies and start seeing reflections. You understand that every conflict in the outer world mirrors a conflict within. The line between light and dark no longer runs between you and them, but through every human heart. In that understanding, compassion is born, not the shallow compassion of pity, but the deep compassion that arises from recognizing your shared fragility and strength. This descent is the heart of rebuilding, because you cannot create a new self upon denial. You must first see yourself as you truly are, in both beauty and darkness. The shadow holds the key to your wholeness. Only by walking through it can you reclaim your lost power, your authenticity, and your inner peace. Beneath the noise of the world, there exists a quiet voice that calls you toward what is real. It does not shout, it whispers through intuition, through a sudden feeling of truth, through the quiet ache of something missing. This inner voice is the compass of your authentic nature, the one that existed before you learned to please, to perform, and to pretend. Yet in the chaos of modern life, this voice is often drowned by the constant hum of other people's opinions, expectations, and judgments. You are taught from childhood to listen outward, to teachers, parents, systems, traditions. And in doing so, you begin to forget the language of your own soul. Rebuilding yourself begins when you turn inward and remember how to listen again. The inner voice does not speak in words, but in symbols, feelings, and subtle impulses. It lives beyond logic in a realm where intuition and emotion carry meaning deeper than reason can grasp. Most people dismiss it because it does not fit within the structures of certainty that the mind craves. Yet this voice is older than the mind. It belongs to the timeless part of you that knows your path even when you do not. When life falls apart, when the identity you built begins to crumble, it is this voice that remains. It guides you through the ruins not by showing the entire road, but by illuminating one small step at a time. To rebuild yourself, you must learn to trust that faint guidance, even when it leads you into uncertainty. The difficulty lies in distinguishing the inner voice from the many other voices that live inside you. There is the voice of fear, which warns you not to risk. There is the voice of desire, which seduces you with false promises of comfort. There is the voice of shame, which tells you that you are unworthy of joy. And beneath them all, there is the quiet, steady voice of truth. It is calm, unwavering, and without argument. It never coerces or manipulates. It simply knows. When you follow it, you feel a strange peace even in the face of fear. When you ignore it, something inside you feels tense, heavy, or misaligned. The body itself becomes an instrument of this awareness. It reacts to dishonesty, not just in others but within yourself. The practice of listening to this voice requires silence, something increasingly rare in a world addicted to noise. Silence is the soil in which the inner voice grows. It cannot be heard through distraction nor found in haste. You must create space for stillness, moments in the morning before the world wakes, moments when you sit alone without reaching for a screen, moments when you let thoughts rise and fall like waves. In that quiet, you begin to notice the subtle rhythm of your own being. The voice emerges not from effort, but from presence. It has been waiting patiently beneath the surface, like a forgotten melody longing to be remembered. Trusting this voice can feel terrifying, especially when it leads you away from what is familiar. It may ask you to leave behind a job that feels lifeless, a relationship that suffocates your growth, a belief that no longer fits the person you are becoming. It often demands sacrifice, the loss of certainty, comfort, and approval. Yet what it offers in return is authenticity. The inner voice leads you not to pleasure, but to meaning. It points toward the experiences that awaken your soul, even if they challenge your ego. You begin to realize that the pain of ignoring your truth is far greater than the fear of following it. There are times when this voice will go silent, not because it has abandoned you, but because it is waiting for you to slow down. The soul does not compete with the noise of your mind. It waits for your attention. When you turn inward again with sincerity, it speaks softly at first, then with greater clarity. It may come in dreams, symbols, synchronicities, small signs that guide you toward what you need to see. The more you honor these signs, the stronger the communication becomes. It is a relationship, one that deepens with faith and consistency. Listening to your inner voice does not mean rejecting logic or the outer world. It means placing them in harmony. The rational mind plans and organizes, but the inner voice gives direction and purpose. When the two work together, you move through life with clarity and integrity. You no longer chase what looks good, you pursue what feels true. You begin to live from the inside out, rather than from the outside in. Those who ignore the inner voice often feel a quiet emptiness, no matter how successful they appear. They live by borrowed values, chasing goals that leave them hollow. But those who learn to listen begin to experience a subtle alignment, a sense that their actions, words, and desires flow from a deeper source. Life stops feeling like a struggle to control and starts feeling like a dance of cooperation with something wiser within. In rebuilding yourself, the inner voice becomes your foundation. It guides you toward healing, integrity, and authenticity. It teaches you that truth is not found in the noise of the world, but in the stillness of your being. And though it may lead you through uncertainty, it never leads you astray, for it speaks from the core of who you truly are. Growth does not come from rejecting one side of yourself, but from embracing the tension between opposites. Every human being lives within a field of contradictions, light and darkness, reason and emotion, strength and vulnerability, love and fear. To rebuild yourself, you must learn to integrate these opposing forces rather than fight them. Most people spend their lives identifying with only one side of their nature, trying to suppress whatever doesn't fit their ideal image. They cling to what feels acceptable and push away what feels shameful. But wholeness is not found in perfection, it is found in reconciliation. The parts you reject do not disappear, they hide in your unconscious, shaping your life from the shadows until you turn to face them with awareness. Within you lives both the creator and the destroyer. The same passion that fuels your love can also ignite your anger. The same sensitivity that makes you compassionate can also make you fragile. When you deny one side, you distort the other. The person who represses anger may lose their ability to assert boundaries. The one who hides their vulnerability may become cold and detached. True rebuilding happens when you stop trying to eliminate your contradictions and instead allow them to coexist, to balance and teach each other. Light without darkness becomes blinding, and darkness without light becomes despair. The art of inner transformation lies in holding both with understanding. The world often teaches you to choose sides, to be either rational or emotional, strong or gentle, confident or humble. But life is not a straight line, it is a circle of polarities. You cannot understand joy without knowing sorrow, nor courage without feeling fear. Each experience completes the other. When you integrate opposites, you no longer see them as enemies but as partners in your evolution. Your rational mind learns to work with your intuition. Your strength learns tenderness. Your vulnerability learns resilience. This balance does not erase conflict. It transforms it into creative energy. Conflict, when faced consciously, becomes the fire that forges character. Inside you, there is a constant dialogue between parts that want different things. One part longs for safety, another for freedom. One part seeks peace, another hungers for challenge. When you ignore this dialogue, you feel torn and confused. But when you listen to it with awareness, you begin to understand the deeper needs beneath each voice. You realize that safety and freedom are not opposites but two movements of the same life force, the desire to live fully and securely. The integration of opposites is the bridge between chaos and harmony, between fragmentation and unity. This inner work requires honesty. It demands that you look beyond the masks you wear. Perhaps you see yourself as strong, but behind that strength hides exhaustion and fear of weakness. Perhaps you see yourself as kind, but beneath that kindness lies suppressed anger. Each identity you cling to has an opposite side you have avoided. To rebuild yourself, you must invite both sides into awareness. You must allow your light to shine without arrogance and your darkness to exist without shame. When you do this, you begin to live authentically, no longer trapped by the false need to appear only good or right. The integration of opposites also extends to your relationships. What you reject in yourself, you often project onto others. You criticize in them what you fear within yourself. When you begin to accept your contradictions, your judgments soften. You start to see that others are also struggling to reconcile their own opposites. Compassion grows.